The night the bitumen vein finally pinched off, Elias Drest, shift foreman of Shaft 12, decided to push the crew one more hour. They were only 9 men and 1 woman, Yara Maldik, the company's ventilation engineer. But in that deep throat of the mountain, every shoulder mattered. The seam they chased had grown thin and glassy, gleaming in the lamplight like the wet back of some buried creature. The superintendent up top wanted numbers, so Elias, with the easy brutality of anyone paid by tonnage, kept the crew swinging. At 2:13, by Yara's wrist chronometer, the wall changed pitch. A tarry smear gave way to yellow-brack stone the color of bruised fruit, and when Garen's pickaxe struck it, the rock didn't ring. It thudded like rotten wood. Garen, an old scarecrow of a miner, lifted his goggles, squinted, and struck again. The third blow sent a tremor shivering along the tunnel floor. A breath of air-cool half-sweet came through the crack, blowing out half the carbide lamps. "Cave behind it," Garen said in the hush. Elias tapped a fresh lucifer to the wick of his lamp. "All right, wedges, let's see her mouth." They pried out hunks the size of skulls until the whole wall sagged inward. Then, with a noise like a sail tearing, the face of the mine split and collapsed. Dust cannoned through the drift. Men coughed, strapped kerchiefs across mouths, waited for the grainy cloud to thin. Beyond the rubble spread a cavern big as a cathedral. The crew's surviving lamps cast saffron cones barely grazing the roof. The air here was cold, almost damp. Elise smelled nothing of methane or hydrogen sulfide, only a faint whiff of peat and, was it lavender? Yara stepped past him, manometer out, recording pressure differentials. "Numbers are good," she said. "Oxygen's a hair rich but breathable." Elias angled his lamp, trying to take the measure of the expanse. The light fell on a floor of black silt, so fine it looked like water, until a trick of vision resolved its texture, powdered coal, or volcanic ash perhaps. No stalactites, no dripstone. The walls were smooth as if melted and refrozen. It felt, Elias thought, unfinished. Like someone half done carving a ball out of wax. "Spread out, buddy up," he ordered. "And no heroics? Anything looks loose, we back out." They descended, 10 dots of flame lowering into the gloom. Their boots left crisp prints which immediately collapsed, like footprints in loose flour. Elias crouched and pinched a handful. The grains were round, glassy, and cold. He wiped his fingers on his overalls and noticed the first oddity. His shadow was digging. Not literally at first glance, but while he stood motionless, beam cocked ahead, the silhouette cast behind him scurried in the opposite direction, as if frantic to claw its way upward toward the roof. He blinked, shook the lamp. The shadow twitched, then resumed the obedient outline of a man. He decided exhaustion was playing games and kept walking. Yara saw it next. She gave a short whistle so everyone halted. She had set her lamp on the ground to take a sample. As she bent, her own shadow appeared higher up on the cavern wall, pitching its pickaxe, though she carried none, into invisible ceiling. Her face tightened with scientific hunger rather than fear. "Elias, light me from behind." He stepped back, shining full on her. The shadow detached, rose like a kite, then settled into place directly overhead. It wielded a pick, whose every blow landed not on stone, but on the underside of the empty air. The image was noiseless, yet each stroke produced a puff of that fine powder drifting downward, as though from a hole that wasn't there. Elias felt his scalp prickle. Some of the men crossed themselves. Garen muttered an old prayer in the Copper Coast dialect. "That's enough sightseeing," Elias declared. "Turn around, all of you. We back out and phone Central." But the moment they pivoted, the cavern shifted. Not physically. No tremor, no rockfall. The lights, however, seemed to warp. Shadows lengthened, crept, rearranged themselves like dogs circling new territory. The phrase came unbidden to Elias's mind. Where shadows dig upward, swapping places with their owners under lantern light. He didn't know where he had heard it, maybe one of old Garen's tavern tales, but it ticked inside his skull with the rhythm of a metronome. "Borman!" Mikhail called, voice an octave too high. "Look at Anders!" Anders was the youngest, a polite boy whose mustache still couldn't decide if it wanted to grow. He stood frozen, lantern at his feet. On the cavern wall behind him danced a silhouette, bigger than Anders by half and built like a brawler. That shadow hoisted a pick the size of a cart tongue and slammed it into unseen earth above. Anders's real arms dangled slack. "Son," Elias said, approaching slowly, "pick up your lamp and come." The shadow paused mid-swing, its head swiveled toward Elias's cast silhouette. There were no eyes, only a smear of deeper black. Still, Elias felt the focus like a thumb pressed to his sternum. The lanterns flickered once. Anders exhaled a tiny gasp and vanished. Not teleported, extinguished, like a candle pinched between fingers. Sanders exhaled a tiny gasp, like a candle pinched between fingers. In his place, on the ash, stood the big shadow's owner, made flesh. A man of impossible height. Shoulders bulging, wearing Andres's clothes that now fit like doll garments. His face was blank as wet clay, features sliding into shape. He looked at his own hands with interest, then met Elias's stare. Juro, the rock drill operator, screamed and bolted. In the ping of clashing lights, every man's shadow jittered, foxtrotted, blurred. Whoa! Juro sprinted ahead of him, elongated to 50 feet, then dug at the roof. When shadow and body crossed, they snapped like magnets. Juro slapped flat against the ground, a two-dimensional smear, while the liberated shape rose, now in full relief, turning solid. It sniffed, as though scenting a future. Chaos detonated. Miners collided. Lamps dropped and rolled, kicking out strange eclipses across silt and quartz. Elias forced his breath into the 4-count taught by his father. If roof caves, mind your air. Panic, he knew, wasted oxygen and decisions. "Lights down," he shouted. "Kill the flames." One by one, carbide hissed out. Darkness flooded. The booming of picks ceased. Elias tasted metal on his tongue. Someone sobbed. Another mumbled a prayer. In the absolute black, he could not tell whose voice belonged to flesh and whose to brand-new intruders. He fished the electric torch from his belt, thumb hovering. Yara's whisper touched his ear. "No. Quiet." A minute passed, then 2, in total night. An otherworldly rustle drifted overhead like dirt sliding through an hourglass. No picks thunked, but the fine grain still rained down, hissing softly. Elias leaned close. "Ideas?" "I saw something," she breathed. "The shadows. They were digging toward light. Our lamps give them purchase. Remove light, they lose direction. Then we leave in dark? The path is straight, 100 meters. We can feel the rail ties." Elias nodded, though she couldn't see. He clicked his tongue for attention, tapped his knuckles twice on Pipewomaner's code for follow. No flame, no torch. Just blind, slow retreat. They shuffled until Elias's outstretched hand struck a timber brace. Good. Entrance to the drift. Behind him, the cavern sighed like an animal thwarted, silt still powdered over their helmets. "Roll call," he murmured. Fingers brushed his shoulder, then his sleeve, counting by touch. Yara, Garin, Mattel. No, Mattel was gone. The big intruder? No way to know. 4 more fumbles. They were 6 bodies total, less the original 10. He prayed they were all still human. "Stay touching," Elias said. He took the lead, one palm sliding the right-hand wall, boots toe-heel along the rail tie to avoid tripping. Minutes, maybe hours, trickled by. In darkness, time thinned like melted glass. After 30 paces, Elias felt a tremor through the wall. Wood groaned. A breeze, but wrong, rushed past them from the adit toward the cavern as if the mountain inhaled. Behind, someone grunted. A scuffle. Elias halted. Who broke grip? Silence. Then footsteps, light as a child's, padded forward. A cold finger grazed his wrist in the chain. He jolted. The skin felt clammy, faintly gritty like the cavern ash. The chain tightened again, with bodies pressing closer, fear forging new links. Yet, he couldn't know who had joined. They resumed. The air warmed gradually. That meant proximity to the main tunnel. Relief began its slow unfurl. Another 10 yards, Elias planned. Then electric lamps. Summon rescue, flood the cavern with arc light. Maybe the high beams would pin those things down. His boot met empty space. The floor sheared away, subsidence. He windmilled, caught the beam, held. Others bumped into him. Must have been a sinkhole opened by geology or laughter. Yes, he heard a giggle. High, soft, too close. The chain convulsed. Yara hissed. "Someone's pulling me!" Elias thrashed, desperate now. "Torches! On 3, he barked. 1! A shock ran the length of the chain, loosening hands. He bit off 2 and 3, snapped his torch on. White spear of lithium light blazed down the drift. What it revealed froze him. The tunnel sides were slick with umbra, liquid shadow pouring like tar toward the far cavern. Each rivulet birthed hands, picks, torsos half-made, reaching, crawling against gravity. Some wore the faces of his missing men, half-carved masks over void. They funneled past the crew, ignoring them, single purpose, to return to darkness and dig. Aaron stood bathed in Elias's light, but Garen's shadow did not copy. It crouched above Garen, inverted, feet to the ceiling, pick in claws, mining for sky. Lantern echoes rippled around it, though no flame burned. Unlit light. When Elias's beam struck it full, the thing screamed, a gnarl of metal on slate, and tried to twist away, but the brightness nailed it like a butterfly. The old miner's body sagged. His eyes rolled back as if the shadow sucked intention from him. Elias widened the torch field, herding the flow of living silhouettes. Wherever light touched, the forms lost coherence, dissolving into smoky strings. An idea sparked. Yara batteries, she understood instantly. Their equipment packs carried spare lithium cells, 5 torches among them. Not floodlights, but maybe enough. They formed a defensive star, each pairing with another. The corridor erupted in harsh radiance. Shadows shrank, skulked, clung to cracks. Garen's parasite howled, then parted like dirty snow in wind. Color flushed back to Garen's cheeks. He sagged into Yara's arms, breathing, but the battery gauges dipped. At max beam they'd have maybe 20 minutes. Move, Elias ordered. They advanced, lights sweeping, blasting every dark pocket. The shadow rivulets evaporated. Yet at the edge of each cone new ones spawned, flowing backward, relentless. Finally the crosscut to main shaft appeared. Steel risers, tool rack, the safety poster, nobody read. Beyond hung the caged elevator. Ghosts silent. The cage, however, was unoccupied. Elias cursed. Up top must have recalled it when comms died. 500 feet of open rays yawned above, ladder pinned to one side. Yara swung her beam along the ladder. Every rung dripped shadow as if dipped in pitch. She bit her lip. We'll never climb in time. Garen, still shaky, rasped, Floodlight in the pump room. Diesel gen, 50,000 lumens. Elias clapped his shoulder. Show me! Pump room squatted a dozen yards along the main shaft, a steel door flanked by gauges. They hustled, torchlight playing tag with pursuing shades. Inside, diesel fumes tickled Elias's nose. A comfortingly human odor. Garen stabbed the starter. The engine coughed, caught, rattled into a steady growl. Overhead, the flood fixture used for large-bore maintenance warmed. Shadows retreated as the white helo crept outward. The doorway filled with them, but they dared not breach the threshold. Yara rummaged a cable spool. We could drag the lamp to the cavern entrance, burn them at the source. Cable's 40 meters, Garen said. Entrance is 60. Then drag the generator too. Elias answered. They synchronized like a field crew under shell fire. Generator onto a handcart, floodlight lashed atop, cable feeding. The humming arc of brilliance moved with them. Shadows clung to edges but parted before the core, as if allergic. Yet as they neared the cavity, the air thickened, resisting. The ash floor churned underfoot like surf. The lamp's beam hit the distant vault. And for the first time the cavern became fully visible. The ceiling was not natural stone at all. It was a scrim of compressed shadows, billions layering into a topsoil of darkness, each new refugee digging to join its kin. They had mined their own inverted earth. The light sliced through, disgorging a maelstrom of spectral dust. For every patch dissolved, more flowed in, desperate, unstoppable. The sight induced vertigo. Elias felt he was standing on the underside of night. The strangers who had stolen Andrus's and Juro's skins stood near the gulf. Fully manifest, they looked human, except their eyes were voids. They watched the oncoming brightness with what might have been sorrow. The tallest lifted his stolen hand as if pleading. Elias spat rage and grief. He cranked the flood to full, sweeping it. The beam erased the tall figure's outline, peeling him to ribbons that whirled upward and dispersed. The others fled, but light hunted them down. Then the lamp's filament whined, popped. Darkness slammed back like a door. Only emergency torches remained, and those now flickered. The shadow roof convulsed. A massive claw of night detached and plunged. Swinging a pick the size of a locomotive, impact cracked stone. Chips flew incandescent where friction briefly birthed fire. The ground lurched. Yara toppled, generator pitching off the cart. Flood lamp shattered on rubble. Elias's torch died. Blackness swallowed them. In that black swelled voices. Our voices, but hollow chanting, coaxing. Join us. Upward, upward. Elias groped for Yara, found her hair. Matches, he muttered. She handed a box. A single strike would just add another lure, but he had a final notion. He tore loose his kerchief, doused it with diesel dripping from the overturned genset, wrapped it round the filament cage of the ruined flood lamp. Garen's trembling hands offered the striker. Elias sparked it. The rag whooshed into an oily torch. He jammed it into the generator's open fuel throat. The diesel took like hungry wine. Flames roared, leaping high, hot white. For an instant, maybe two, the blaze rivaled sunrise. Every shadow in the cavern stretched thin, wobbling, pinned like negatives on photographic paper. And they burned, not with flame, but with bleaching. Outlines faded, losing pigment until nothing remained but flag-shaped scars of lighter air. Anders's stolen bulk collapsed inward, unraveling into harmless dust that fell upward, sucked back into the roiling canopy which itself blistered under the light, membranes popping, sluicing torrents of soot down the walls. The generator exploded. Elias felt nothing, only a sudden silence, then a gentle weightlessness. He lay on his back, staring at a ceiling of naked granite, mottled, ordinary. Gray daylight trickled from a new crater blown through the mountain's side during the blast. Morning. He had not expected to see it again. Beside him, Yara coughed, alive. Garen, too, face blackened, beard smoldering. Two more miners, Vic and Tomas, rose, stumbling. They were 5 now out of 10. No shadows moved independently. Each stayed stitched under its rightful feet. They limped to the outer world. Rescue bearers arrived hours later, lowering stretchers, pumping questions. Elias answered none. He stared at the sun and memorized its warmth, lest night come early. Weeks after, an internal memo circulated. Shaft 12 sealed, scheduled for controlled implosion. Elias was summoned to testify. He signed forms, swore non-disclosure. But one clause, typed small, snagged his eye. Due to uncontained subterrestrial photonegative entities exhibiting behavior analogous to shadows digging upward, swapping places with their owners under lantern light. The phrasing chilled him. Someone in the company already knew. On his last day, he visited the mountain alone. Rain streaked the sealed blast door. He waited until clouds parted and the sun cast his outline on wet concrete. He lifted a boot, checking whether the shape obeyed. It did. Yet as he turned to leave, he thought he heard from deep beneath stone a faint, persistent scrape. A pickaxe, tirelessly mining for dawn.